Hello, everyone, and welcome to NYC Builds Bio's virtual webinar in collaboration with Genetic Engineering and Biotechnology News and Biolabs at NYU Langone. This webinar is entitled NYC Life Sciences Thriving in the Midst of COVID-19. Thanks so much for joining us this afternoon. My name is Nancy Kelly, and I serve on the steering committee and as a founding member of NYC Builds Bio. I'd like to acknowledge the founding and corporate members of our organization who make this programming possible. I also want to thank Nishta Rao, Managing Director at Biolabs at NYU Langone, for supporting this webinar. You know, one question that we're continually asked during this challenging time is, how is New York City Life Sciences actually doing during the pandemic? And I can tell you the short answer is, New York City Life Sciences is thriving and growing. And today we're celebrating that vitality with a webinar that focuses on Biolabs, one of NYC's premier life science spaces. During COVID-19, not only did Biolabs stay open, it accepted 8 new innovators into its space, and several of its companies raised substantial investment rounds for future growth. This webinar is part of an ongoing series of online events hosted by NYC Builds Bio. We'll be taking a break during the month of August, but have posted the schedule of events for September and hope you will join us. If you weren't able to attend our past events, please be sure to check out these programs on the website. Stay tuned for the quarterly newsletter, which will be coming in August, jam-packed with lots of positive news for New York City life science industry, and a membership networking event, which will be announced shortly. Today, we welcome not only Nishta, but a stellar panel of senior executives from the resident companies in Biolabs at NYU Langone. We will discuss their recent investment rounds, industry partnerships, growth strategy, and future space needs. Lots of interesting stories here. Welcome to Shara Tiku, co-founder and CEO, C16 Biosciences, Laura Katz, founder and CEO, Helena, Aaron Weaver, senior legal counsel, Atai Life Sciences, and Asaf Baran, CEO and chief scientific officer of C2I Genomics. Thanks to you all for joining us today. Before we begin, I just wanted to cover a few administrative details. There's a program and a PowerPoint highlighting the hosts and speakers for this meeting. These will be posted on the website after the meeting. The program is being recorded and will be distributed to all registrants. If anyone's having technical difficulties accessing the Zoom room or other technical issues, please email info@nycbuildsbio.org or send a notice through the chat button at the bottom of your screen. Since most of you are participating in listen-only mode, please feel free to submit your questions via the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. We will open up for discussion and Q&A at the end of the program, and will address as many audience questions as possible. At the end of the meeting, we will have a chance for smaller randomized groups to meet in separate rooms where you can open their videos and microphones to talk to each other. You can stay as long as you like to get to know each other and share stories. Now I'll open it up to Nishta Rao, who will give some opening remarks on behalf of Biolabs. Nishta?
Thank you so much, Nancy. Hello, everybody. Great to see you in what is now our new normal. I just also wanted to take a quick minute to thank Nancy and her team for organizing this incredible event and webinar, which brings together a whole plethora of genres together that make up this life science sector, from real estate to the general ecosystem to scientists. So thank you for bringing this together, and thank you for providing us at Biolabs the platform to showcase the incredible work that is going on, not just in our space, but in the city. Also, a big thank you to the companies for presenting and being here, and the Biolabs team, Jackie Dove in particular, who is here and helped organize this from our end as well. So very quickly, our main goal here at Biolabs at NYU Langone is to provide the infrastructure for entrepreneurs and for scientists, for inventors, to really take their technology from the proof of concept stage and translate that into what we hope will become a commercially viable product or therapy. Now, all of that doesn't happen in one place in our space. It does take quite a lot of time, but what we want to do is give our entrepreneurs the best platform and the best chance to succeed. And we know that life sciences is a process. It's a slow-moving process, though now we're trying to increase the speed. But it's something that takes time, and a lot of companies don't make it. So the thinking behind this is to give these companies a very low-risk infrastructure, which they don't really have to put any effort into. It's there. And of course, we watch them grow and help them grow. But for that initial step, there's at least a place where they can get started. So currently, we are the largest incubator in Manhattan. We just had our ribbon cutting last December, and we are now just shy of about 30 companies. And these companies are incredible. They are diverse. We are seeing convergence of technologies. The boundaries are being pushed back every day, and the quality of these companies, as you'll see today, is just incredible. We do also, would be remiss if I didn't mention our partners at NYU Langone. We enjoy tremendous support from them, and we're very grateful for everything that they have done to make this endeavor possible. We also have received phenomenal support from the city and the state, which have invested very heavily in this project. And the general ecosystem, we have received such immense goodwill from them. And as you all know, the New York City ecosystem is small and very supportive. And we're very excited that we have this opportunity to really write the story. The story isn't complete. And we have the opportunity here to really put the exclamation point on this New York City biotech startup story. So I think that's what makes all of us really work hard towards accomplishing that. So just, to talk a little bit about what Nancy alluded to, the last few months have been really hard, especially in New York City, and that's an understatement. So we have seen a tremendous interest in our space. We have seen companies rise up and meet this challenge of COVID-19. A lot of our companies have pivoted into COVID research. Our space has been operational thanks to the incredible team during this time. And the companies have continued to work. And so just a virtual round of applause for them, because they continued to keep sight of their goals and continued working towards them. So it has been really amazing to see how everybody has come together. The companies that you will hear from today, C16 Biosciences, Atai, Helena, C2I, these are the companies that make New York City so special. And I'm hoping that that you really get to know them a little bit. They are high potential, fast growing companies that are definitely going to make an incredible impact on society, and also just meeting unmet medical needs and meeting unmet needs, period. And so I learn from these companies every day. It's a pleasure to see them as much as I can now, but previously to see them on a daily basis. So we are very excited about the future of life sciences and the startup arena here in New York. We think it's going to continue to grow, and we're very, very privileged, I feel, to be in this position to help support it. So without further delay, I would love to hand it over to Asaf from C2I, and a very exciting company housed both in New York as well as Israel, and doing very, very exciting stuff. Asaf, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Nishta. Thank you, Nancy. Thank you for inviting us. Very exciting. I wish that I could see all of you.
I'm especially excited about your company because it's a spin out from the New York Genome Center.
Right, right. So C2I Genomics is a spin-off from the New York Genome Center and Weill Cornell Hospital. It's a company that currently commercializes a technology that allows cancer treatment monitoring and personalized optimization of treatment for cancer patients that cover basically all of the solid cancer types and all of the stages. So we developed a platform that can use a regular blood test in order to detect cancer in a super high sensitivity, and even to quantify the amount of cancer in the patient blood. So basically the quantification allowed to monitor in real time. So a clinician can, with our technology, can see if the patient is responding or not to therapy within weeks. So if the current paradigm is that you are starting a treatment after 3 months to 6 months, you are going through CAT scan or PET-CT, they're saying it's not so conclusive, we need to wait another 3 or 6 months, and then they can tell you, okay, it's not working, we need to do something else. And again, this trial and error takes 6 months to 1 year for each cycle. So now we are talking about doing that in 3 weeks. After 3 weeks, you can actually know if the treatment is working. And we proved that the technology can basically work in such a sensitivity that it can be applied for all of the stages of the disease. So we're actually working on the early stages, neoadjuvant treatment, adjuvant treatment. So the first line treatment that patients are receiving, we can optimize and make sure that they are getting the right treatment. And basically, if it's not working, to translate it to a more systemic or a different therapy. In these stages, actually, clinicians are so excited that in these stages, we can actually talk about cure. So if in metastatic disease, where basically most of the innovation technologies currently focus on metastatic disease, the fight is on prolonging life span in another 3 months, 6 months, 1 year. In early stage, we can actually talk about cure. So it was a very exciting time to be in C2I in the last few months, the COVID-19 period. We raised $12 million. Actually, our lead investor never met us personally. So basically, it's also, I think it's like really a unique period. So we closed a $12 million round without meeting with the lead investor. It was all a Zoom discussion. We grew significantly. So we're currently running clinical studies in the US, Europe, Denmark, France, Switzerland, Singapore. One of the aspects of our technology is that actually all of the innovation is based on really innovative signal processing, machine learning, and basically innovative software. And that's allowed us to bring also a very unique go-to-market perspective that basically we can define ourselves as a diagnostic software company, as a SaaS provider, or we call it DAS, diagnostic as a software. So basically we can come to large cancer centers in Denmark, in France, in Singapore, and tell them, okay, you can basically process a very, very simple wet lab protocol in your labs, something that is off-the-shelf kit that all of the technicians can basically train in a couple of hours and do it, and then upload it to our cloud-based system, which is GDPR approved, EPA certified, and so on, and basically get a novel cancer detection and monitoring in your own lab, in your own territory, in your own country. So that's a major breakthrough This is something that our clients in Europe, in Singapore, and so on have been waiting for. And we are actually now commercializing it in a very wide stage.
So your investment round was led by Casting Capital, right?
Yes.
Who is also a New York-based investment firm.
Yeah.
And one of the exciting things about all of the companies on the call today is that they all have new investors. You know, traditionally, the companies that have grown in New York City have been launched by kind of a key cadre of investment firms. But now we're seeing new ventures coming in and making those investments. And that's very, very exciting. And Caston actually led your round, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, again, I'm not going to talk about from their perspective, but I think Caston is going to new fields, to early stage investments, and are really looking for exciting opportunities. And the Genome Center connection also played a part in. So Eli Caston is a big supporter of the New York Genome Center. They connected us, and it played a big part in basically getting this investment in.
That's great. So what are your operations moving forward? What will they look like, do you think, here in New York and in Israel too?
So basically we have a team. So the headquarters is in New York. We are a US company. We have an R&D team in Israel that is focused on the software engineering, IT, cloud computing, basically a lot of the hardcore software production level is done in Israel. Basically, we are, again, developing ourselves as a software company, which actually helped us a lot during the COVID. So moving to a virtual context was actually like seamless, and we continue working without even noticing that. So currently in Biolabs, what we especially like is the ecosystem. So again, coming together, meeting with other pharma companies, diagnostic companies that are doing similar processes that we are doing, a lot of enrichment with basically with meetings about different subjects in FDA regulation, pharma interaction, and so on. I think it's very enriching, but again, the way that we are built allow us to spend to wherever we need. Yeah.
That's great. Congratulations. Yeah. So Laura, Helena is also a company at NYU Biolabs, and you have a great product that you're working on, and it uses a slightly different approach, and I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, definitely. So, hi everyone. I am the founder and CEO of Helena. I'm also an adjunct professor at NYU, so I've been teaching at the university for a few years now, and we are developing and commercializing biosynthetic breast milk. So for us, what that looks like is creating an alternative to infant formula that doesn't rely on bovine milk, which is how we traditionally see infant formula being made, and create something that bridges the gap between the immune, gut, and like overall nutritional benefits of breast milk. You know, bridging that between infant formula and what we typically find in breast milk. So with our approach, the way that we are developing the product is via fermentation reactions. So what we've been able to do, and where our tech is very special, is we're genetically engineering yeast. And our yeast is basically being trained to produce human milk proteins. So not only are we starting to rely less on bovine milk, which is environmentally a challenge for the industry, and it also doesn't really look like breast milk from how it nutritionally functions for baby, we can also make these human milk ingredients and commercialize them in a way to provide parents and infants with an alternative that fulfill something closer to breast milk. So we're currently developing both proteins and antibodies, and our goal is to scale this up through a commercial process and run it through the FDA. We will have to do not quite the 3 clinical trial steps that you would see of a drug, but kind of one clinical trial that is special to the infant formula industry, and then bring that to market as a powdered product for parents to feed their children if they can't provide any breast milk. So here at Biolabs, we've been working since January. We've assembled a team of really awesome research scientists who are all genetic engineers and fermentation specialists to really figure out how we can make something look as close to breast milk as possible, and how we can really change the conversation for parents who might not be able to provide breast milk to their child for so many different reasons, whether it's a physiological reason or they're working, or there's so many different things in between. So we're really excited about this direction and being able to use technology to improve products for parents and children. Our goals in terms of moving forward is to develop these proteins and antibodies, but also eventually develop other parts of breast milk that that can be replaced by typical food ingredients. So in breast milk, we find milk fat, but in infant formula, we see vegetable oil because that's the closest thing. So we're really excited about all of the different parts of breast milk that we could, create and scale up via our fermentation process in the lab, and then take that through and over the finish line with the FDA to get that into a commercial product that we can over time iterate and make better. So that's what we're doing at Helena, and we're really, really happy to be working here at Biolabs and have the space and the capacity to push our research forward quickly.
And you're raising money right now, is that right?
So we're in the process of closing our fundraising round, so I can't say too much. There should be an announcement about this in the next couple of weeks, but I was very surprised that we had so much interest in this round. I think, fusing biotechnology and food in women's health is expensive, and being a first-time founder, I was a little bit worried about navigating this space, but I think from my experience through fundraising, a lot of investors are starting to see, and typical consumer investors who might not be involved in biotech, they're really seeing interest, I think, because of what's going on with public health. Investing in health sciences and life sciences seems like a really valuable thing. So we brought on a couple consumer investors who've made a few investments in the biotech space, but really are trying to get their foot in the door, so to speak, both in San Francisco and New York City. So hopefully in the next couple of weeks, we can put that announcement out to the world. We'll have a nice PR piece about what we've raised.
Well, we'll keep our fingers crossed. And I'm intrigued. I know the audience, when they think of life science space, they're basically thinking of fume hoods and, your traditional lab environment. But what you guys are doing is really genetically engineering DNA, right? And so you use the computers to do that first, right? And then you have vats that you're fermenting yeast in. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we have a few different software programs that we use, but it's ultimately comes down to pretty basic genetic engineering techniques. We're playing a little bit with CRISPR, but we're also limited to what the FDA will allow us to do in food products. So honestly, from a technique perspective and an equipment perspective, we are really well equipped here at Biolabs to do the work that we need to do to engineer our yeast and to run all the assays and to develop the proteins as best as we can.
And then when you move to scale up, what do those operations look like? I mean, how do they differ from your traditional lab space?
So for us, we're going to be relying on large bioreactors. So in terms of actual space, they do take up a lot of space when we think about, fixing our process to a 50-liter or 100-liter bioreactor. It's, that's kind of the trajectory We are in the process of working through a contract with a vendor, a big dairy company who has 50,000 liter bioreactors to run our process at scale for when we're ready to manufacture large quantities. But I would say the in-between step for us between biolabs and commercialization is really testing that we can do this in a bioreactor that is 100 liters or 1,000 liters. And that takes up, more actual physical space and capital capacity on our end. We currently actually have here in Biolabs like a small little bench top 3-liter reactor that we can kind of mimic the reaction in the fermentation process. So that's what we're working with right now.
Okay, so how big is your team?
Our team is going to be 6 next week, and we should be 10 people by the end of this year.
Terrific. Well, congratulations. Yeah. That's very exciting and a much needed product, by the way, especially in third world countries, right?
Yes, definitely. We're excited about being able to provide this product to communities where water quality is not safe, and we can not only provide a better product, but a safer product. So I think that there's a lot of good that we can do to help parents and infants.
Yeah, terrific.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
So Aaron, do you want to tell us a little bit about Thai Life Science?
Yes, absolutely. And a good place to probably start is just to sort of briefly introduce what I do at Atai, and also make the disclosure that I actually work on also for a family office that actually invests into life sciences, and that's how I got involved with Atai. But we invest into, so I work for a European-based family office. The connection into New York is through Atai. We incubated and funded that asset out to a particular point in time, and then started syndicating capital into it. I'm operationally involved in Atai for broadly about 60-70% of my working time. I am the fundraising lead there, and I also work as a general counsel, so I've been involved in a lot of Atai's fundraising activities. I'm actually situated in London, although we have the significant part of the team that's actually based in New York. Moment, so I'm just actually standing in for one of our team who unfortunately couldn't speak tonight. But Thai fundamentally is focused in developing novel mental health therapies. A lot of the therapies under development at the moment have been actually taken from psychedelic treatments that have been used either through shamanistic or ritualistic practices, or those through underground a community of underground therapists. Or actually in legal settings, whether it be within the Caribbean, the Netherlands, or other places where they don't actually fall under the remit of controlled substances, and they've shown a significant degree of efficacy before in treating severe mental health disorders. So Atai operates as a clinical development company whereby we fund very promising science within the area. We sort of work within the translational research gap, and we provide the operational backbone and infrastructure to a lot of researchers to sort of advance patient access to a lot of these compounds. We fundamentally target areas of mood disorders, addiction, and anxiety. We have a number of clinical assets, some that have FDA breakthrough designation therapy, and are mainly targeted towards areas of significant unmet medical needs. So treatment-resistant depression is one, opioid use disorder is another. And I think in terms of the way that the pandemic has really affected us is it's really put a spotlight on issues of mental health. We work pretty strongly with a number of patient advocacy groups, some that are situated in New York. So the National Alliance of Mental Illness is a stakeholder group that we are significantly aligned with. They report that they've seen a significant increase in people using their helplines as a result of mental distress, just through lockdown measures and broader anxiety that I think people are feeling or experiencing because of the uncertainty that is surrounding the pandemic at the moment. It, for us, created a little bit of operational uncertainty at the start because I don't think anyone had a real firm grasp of where this was all heading. We were actually in the middle of fundraising at that point in time. And we ended up closing out a round, which was roughly about $30 million. And we were also supporting a funding round for one of our portfolio entities that sort of had moved into a much more significant stage of capital need, whereby we were able to assist in raising 80 million for them, plus actually contributing some of our own capital. And that actually saw the involvement of big pharma, some of the well-known life sciences investment community. I think the pandemic did provide some unusual challenges in terms of accessing capital markets, but it sort of reiterated a need to me because I'm based in Europe. I spend a lot of my time traveling to New York. I'm fortunate because I have family there. I feel like I can really plug into a community, and I come into Biolabs. Our team is based there. That's basically a launching pad for me for doing my meetings around the city. But it reinforced the sort of almost central nature of the finance community, and the fact that a lot of the calls in or the people that I do meet are New York based, and having that visibility and that nexus to access to that community there, I feel, is being a life sciences company is rather quite critical to our ongoing growth.
Yeah, and so we talked yesterday about how you compare that to the European investment community, and you had some pretty strong ideas that New York was a good place to be.
Yes, very much so. I think it's and this probably ties into, not to sound like a cliche European, but it ties a little bit into the American dream. People reward big ideas, entrepreneurship, the ability to progress things that will catalyze change. Having raised money like a significant number of times over in Europe and also in the Far East, is they operate at different speeds. They tend to center around different asset classes, different types of ideas. A lot of the risk capital that really exists for significant life sciences innovation is in the United States, and you have the surface infrastructure of investment banks, different strata of investors, amazing life science lawyers, whether it's IP or those helping out the commercial aspects of things, like sort of circulating around a particular geography, which just makes it a hub for being able to do those things. And what really is helpful is the ability and the access to capital, because that really gives you the resource and the momentum that you effectively need to be able to accelerate some of the things that you have in development.
So what kind of investors were you able to tap into in New York?
So a number of the hedge fund community we were able to tap into. So some that dabble into life sciences, they have some significant investments there. They're probably not, some are the anchor or reference investors that an investment banker, if you want to go float a company, would say, well, we would expect that this person be on there because they really sort of move markets in relation to these therapeutic areas. So there was one or two of those. There was also just another round of sort of more generalist hedge fund investors who tend to have deeper pockets, sort of will follow where the more influential money effectively moves. And then more broadly, it was, probably more those towards that have a little bit more of a public markets leaning. We managed to get, there was also probably a number of high net worth individuals that were involved in that, and a number of New York-based family offices, I probably should say. Like a lot of the venture money came out of the US West Coast that we do have, but yeah.
So unlike a lot of life science startups that come out of the university, yours was patient-driven. And we talked a little bit about that yesterday. I'd love for you to just tell that story.
Yeah, such as the general sort of founder's dilemma with starting businesses, it was a series of people that came together that were trying to solve for a real life problem that they were experiencing. And that was personal tie-ins or connections with failures in the prevailing standard of care. So a lot had sought alternate therapies after they had been through different types of psychiatric patient in care. There was different types of medication, including SSRIs, SNRIs, mood stabilizers, talk therapy. and a variety of different treatments are available. And after a little bit of persistence, particularly with someone tied into the group whose mother happens to be a medical practitioner, and just exhaustively combing every article through PubMed, had found something about the responsiveness of ketamine therapy. And that was actually used and applied to someone who works within the company, who then helped sort of prosper and promote the story. And then it was a series of like-minded individuals that came together. So we were able to attract a little bit of investment. It was pretty challenging at that point in time to get people moving around the idea that predominantly psychedelic compounds could hold tremendous therapeutic promise to treating serious mental health disorders. We had quite a bit of luck along the way, because it was a topic that then was picked up in thought leadership forums like TED. Michael Pollan, who's sort of well-known author, writes for the New York Times, and wrote a book about psychedelics called How to Change Your Mind, exploring a lot of the research that was going on. And then there was actually an FDA approval for sort of first psychedelic compound used for treatment-resistant depression, a ketamine intranasal spray. A lot of that then sort of allowed us, it gave us the momentum to raise significant amounts of money, actually a couple $100 million, for the company and some of its platform companies, and attracts significant degrees of attention out of the psychiatric community and also the big pharma community. So it was, I think there was a lot of luck that was on our side, but there was a lot of patience and persistence. And there was also a story, like we were actually like living, talking stories of the significant unmet medical need.
Yeah. So when you say your platform companies, these are all kind of formed around psychedelic compounds, is that right?
Predominantly, or those that, there are non-psychedelic compounds, those that have either failed in late-stage clinical trials and then been re-examined for therapeutic prospects, in addition to enabling technology, which allows us to understand a little bit more about those drugs and how they prospectively work in the body. The core focus at the moment is towards psychedelics, and that's just really extracting a pre-existing evidence base. There's a lot of open label studies around these compounds. There's a lot of research that's been done around them and their core effectiveness. A number of those studies almost look like double-blind, placebo-controlled, randomized studies with significant sample sizes. So that's almost like perfect to sort of pick up and say, okay, we can develop this compound, particular treatments quite a bit further.
So what does your operation look like as you grow?
So we work as a distributed team. We have a team in Germany. We have a team in New York. I'm based in London with one other person. We have some people spread across the US West Coast. And I think as we grow, there just happens to always be this leaning in towards the United States. And a lot of that just really results because of talent, because of capital, and just because of just broader institutional know-how. And, sort of living within the European life science as well, that always sort of seems to move broadly in that direction. So our team will probably grow rather quite significantly. Our breadth will be, we will move more into digital therapeutics and something that provides a stronger form of integrated care for mental health patients. So that will probably mean that we'll take on a lot more personnel over the next few years.
Great. Well, thank you. And Shara, congratulations on the funding that you just raised. Tell us a little bit about C16 Biosciences.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Nancy. So C16 Biosciences uses biotechnology to produce sustainable palm oil alternatives. Palm oil is a vegetable oil, and it is the most popular vegetable oil in the world. It's somewhere between a $60 and $90 billion annual industry. And the ingredient is found in everything from soaps and shampoos to makeup and packaged foods like Nutella, peanut butter, ice cream, and pizza. It's found in 50% of products on supermarket shelves. It's a great product. It works functionally really well. Brands like the way that it works in their end products, but the problem is with the means of production. So palm oil comes from an oil palm tree, which can only grow right around the equator. As the world population has grown and continues to grow, and demand for products continues to grow, we've seen a lot of investment in expanding the capacity of palm oil, which comes through the deforestation of tropical rainforest and peatland. So this deforestation impacts many parts of our life, most specifically climate change. So this drives somewhere between 500 million and 1.5 billion tons of carbon dioxide emissions each year, simply from deforestation linked to palm oil, which is the equivalent of burning 300 football fields worth of rainforest every single hour. It's tremendous. There's also an impact on biodiversity, of course. So there are thousands of animal species that live in these forests whose homes are now destroyed. The orangutan has become sort of the face of palm oil, as their global population has been cut in half, destroyed by the palm oil industry. There are social implications. Most of the big palm plantations deploy child labor and debt bondage on their plantations, and there are human health implications. So I learned about palm oil for the first time back in 2013. I was in a former life working on Wall Street, and I covered our Asia markets. I was sent over to Singapore, and I was sent over with, with a mask just like this that I had to wear at all times, because the air quality index in Singapore was over 400, when over 300 is considered toxic. At that time, pregnant women were effectively banned from walking outside because the air quality was so bad. And I asked my peers and colleagues, what's up? What's going on with this haze in Singapore? And they said, oh, it's the oil palm plantations in Indonesia. They burn the forest every year. So they're burning the forest and it comes over. The impact on human health is also tremendous, as we're literally burning trees and peatland and putting smoke into the air. So this is a problem, as I mentioned, that I learned about 7 years ago. And my co-founder, Harry, also experienced this problem firsthand in Costa Rica. Harry and I met, along with our third co-founder, David, at the MIT Media Lab in Boston. We were all at Harvard and MIT studying different courses and not really looking to start a company. But we came together because we wanted to solve this problem. It was late 2016. We had just seen Impossible Foods launch their very first burger at Momofuku Nishi down the street. And we were really excited about that because from our perspective, we saw this be the first implication of sort of engineering biology hitting consumers. So we'd seen it in chemicals, insulin production, but with the Impossible Burger, we were seeing engineered biology impacting consumers really directly and consumers responding positively toward it. So Harry, David, and I met at the Media Lab. We said, I don't know, could we solve palm oil using microbiology? And we really started from first principles. We had no sort of specific hammer for solving our problem. We just asked what would have to be true if we wanted to solve this problem. We had $1,000 from MIT, which we used to make our first prototype, which was about this much oil. But we got a lot of positive feedback, both on the technology and on the market. It's a huge market with a really, I think, a developed need. People have been looking for a palm oil alternative for over a decade, and they have failed to be able to find a viable alternative. And so with that $1,000, we sort of just kept working. We took the next step and the next step and the next step. In 2018, we went to California and participated in Y Combinator. We raised our seed round on the back of that in 3 days.
Just tell the audience what Y Combinator is. They may not be familiar with that.
Definitely. So Y Combinator is a startup accelerator. It was started about 2011, and it's traditionally been in the realm of consumer software. So it's traditionally been software and startups looking to make a difference. The company is based in Mountain View, and the economics have varied over time, but essentially they invest about $120,000 for 7% equity at the start. It's normally the first money in. So sometimes they'll invest in just a founder with an idea. If the company has sales, it's generally very early. it's a 3-month program. It's not really a boot camp, but it's sort of a structured program for thinking about basic foundations of building product and building companies. And at the end of Y Combinator, there's something called Demo Day, in which the startups get on stage, they give a 2-minute presentation, and they have an opportunity to match with thousands of investors. It's a really interesting and I think unique platform for being able to raise money. IndieBio is a similar platform, and IndieBio just launched their operations in New York, which we are really excited about. So
SOSB, just they've got pilot labs at Rockefeller right now.
yeah.
Yeah.
Great. So we raised our seed round then, and we started building out the team. And last year, we decided to move our team and company from Boston down to New York. We packed up our lab in a U-Haul. I drove the U-Haul down 95, and we unloaded at Biolabs. And we've been here ever since.
So why did you leave Boston? I mean, that's supposed to be the Mecca, right?
It is. And, you know, a lot of people, particularly West Coast or Boston people, also like to say, oh, you're going to have such a hard time hiring people in New York. And we actually just doubled the size of our team. And I think we have excellent talent. So we haven't seen that be a problem at all. And in fact, we found it to be a very compelling place to build a company. We moved from Boston to New York for a few reasons. I think 1, we like New York and wanted to be here. 2, we saw New York doing some really interesting and compelling things in the life sciences space. And 3, we didn't really find, I think, a great groove in Boston. So Boston is a headquarters for life sciences globally, certainly. But I think what we found was that there were very narrow definitions of what that meant to be doing life sciences or to be able to build a company there. And traditionally it has meant drug development. And we don't do drug development. We, similar to Laura described earlier, we do microbiology and we engineer yeast, we ferment yeast, and we produce products. So we're working on a sort of new way of manufacturing, biomanufacturing. And we're producing consumer-facing products, not drugs. There's no regulatory approval required for our products. So it looks very different than standard life sciences look. And, you know, I think as our company, which is sort of solving something that's very ambitious, and we're trying to solve it in a radical way that looks very different than the way that agriculture and production of products looks today. We found a lot of the sort of traditional biotech benefits of Boston. They felt a little bit old school to us. And so New York offered something fresh. I think we also saw the integration of industries in New York, the strong presence of consumer brands. So, you know, palm oils in lipstick and in major food products. All of those big companies are here in New York. And a lot of the creative people that think about product and brand are based here as well. And so we thought that offered a benefit for building our company. And then I think the last thing is we saw a great community here. It's a small pool of biotechs in the sort of non-traditional sense of biotech, but we really like the people that are working on the problems here, and we wanted to be a part of building that.
Yeah, so, you know, you're one of a growing number of companies, and we were talking about New BioCity. That's a small organization in Brooklyn and comprised of companies like yours who are working in engineering biology, a lot with new materials, you know, making leather in the lab, for example. You know, the Biodesign Challenge, which is encouraging design students to create new materials in a competition at the Museum of Modern Art every year. We'll be hearing from them in September. And one of the strengths of New York City is that it does have these variety of industries that can support the companies like yours, you know, that want to grow here. But New York doesn't have the biomanufacturing capacity that it needs to nurture and, you know, support your operations. So you had to go all the way to the West Coast to find a biofoundry to work with. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's right. I think it's been a pain point. So we just received a grant from the DOE funding our work together with a group called the Agile Biofoundry, which is a group of national labs working on building the future of biomanufacturing. So our grant, which is a couple of $1 million, is to work together with the Pacific Northwest Lab and Sandia National Lab together on further engineering and scaling up production of our strain our yeast strain for a few novel targets. We're very excited about that, but yeah, Nancy, as you mentioned, we did sort of have to go over to the West Coast to find a lot of those capabilities, and a lot of it comes down to infrastructure. You know, I think the people are here, the talent are here, and they want to be here, but it really comes down to the infrastructure. And we're in Biolabs, it's been great. We're quickly outgrowing our space. As I mentioned, we doubled the size of our team. We moved from one lab into the biggest private lab that they have here, and we're quickly outgrowing it. And so we are now looking for a growth space somewhere between 10 and 25,000 square feet to be able to grow in. And those are starting to be built, which I think is something that's exciting about New York, but we're in the very early days. And so I think it's exciting to see that capacity and infrastructure starting to come, but you know, I think we've got a long way to go still.
Yeah, so we've been encouraging the city to actually invest in, you know, a pilot manufacturing facility that would support companies like yours. And 3 years ago, I actually submitted an application to the city, and almost 200 scientists from around the world wrote in support of New York having that capability, because they thought it was a very centralized place to work, easy to get in and out of. They could see how it would support their research and their spin outs. And so hopefully this is an area that the city will, you know, pay closer attention to in the future. But you've also got new investors in your company, and that's very exciting. I mean, Bill Gates' energy fund is an investor, right?
Yep, that's right. So we closed our Series A in February, just before the pandemic really took off, which was very good, lucky timing. So we raised a $20 million Series A. It was led by Breakthrough Energy Ventures, which is a $1 billion fund focused on climate change. And it was started by Bill Gates, and there's a group of people there. But yeah, they're really the exact partner that we are looking for at this stage. They're deep-pocketed, focused on climate, and so they're interested in financial and climate-related impact metrics. And they're a technical team, so they understand the nature of the work that we're doing to the degree that you want sort of your investor partners. We also brought in some new investors. So we brought in a group called Waldencast, which it was started by Michel Brousset, who was the former president of L'Oreal North America Consumer Products Group. So his team has deep experience, decades of experience at L'Oreal, Procter & Gamble, and then a few of the sort of hot food tech startups like Harmless Harvest, the coconut water company. So they bring a really interesting balance. They're based here in New York, of the sort of consumer and product application areas. And then we had some return investors, including some of your sort of more traditional Silicon Valley based VCs focused on hard tech like Data Collective, DCDC, and others.
Great, yeah. Well, you know, 3 years ago when we started this organization, we had a symposium, and giving the introductory talk to that meeting, I basically said that, you know, in 50 years, many of our products are going to have a biological component in them. And I don't think anyone quite knew what I was talking about, but now that companies like yours are emerging, and like Laura's company, I think people will have a better feel for these kinds of products, and food products as well, that, you know, are going to be made in the lab and have more sustainable approaches.
Yeah, that's right. And I think, you know, it's definitely about sustainability. And really over the last 2 years, we've seen a huge change in how people treat sustainability, which used to be very much an ESG metric, to something that's become front and center focus for many brands in the personal care space. Clean beauty and sustainable procurement and tracing is the hottest topic in the industry, and it's the fastest growing category. But it's also about performance. When you use biomanufacturing rather than agricultural manufacturing or something like this, you have more control over the end products. So you can design the end oils in our perspective, and you can create oils that actually don't exist in nature. And you have a higher level of purity because you're not subject to the whims of Mother Nature and all the transport. And the other thing that we're really finding from customers is it solves a really major supply chain point for them as well, which I think is not obvious when you think about these biomanufactured products, whether it's in food or other. But having a simpler supply chain is a really compelling solution to a lot of brands. So I think what sounded like sort of sustainability greenwashing years ago, as we've started to develop more, people start to understand there are real business reasons to switch and to adjust the way that we make and manufacture products today. And it is sustainability, but it's also performance, supply chain, and really core things that impact how you run your business and how you make money.
Yeah, great point. Great point. So I want to open it up to the audience a little bit. I don't have any questions in the chat box yet, but if somebody wants to submit one, this would be a great time to ask your questions. We've got, 4 great companies that are growing here, and a lot of people want to understand the kinds of environments that they need and how they're going to grow and develop. So this is your chance to ask some good questions. So just, kind of going around to all 4 of you, and just some last thoughts in terms of, in the post-COVID world, what are the challenges that you're facing, and how do you see your company and the industry developing overall? Aaron, do you want to start?
Yeah, okay. So I think we're, as a company, we're a little bit later stage, like very close to public markets at the moment. Sorry, sun is sort of washing me out here. Is that there seems to be an overexuberance, at least for us anyway, an overexuberance within the financial markets, which may then ripple down to funding conditions as we sort of start to scale and grow our business and prospectively misalign our funding needs with the scale that we're actually developing. I think that I would see as being the principal risk, because I do see a decoupling between what's going on within industry more broadly and then the way that the markets are effectively treating things. But so far as capital conditions exist at the moment, I think that it's generally pretty supportive of life sciences. The feedback that I do get is that there's a lot more generalist money moving towards funding life sciences. As one of our sort of better known investors, Peter Thiel, had said that, the last 10 years were the greatest innovation in the last 10 years were known was the advent of the 148 character tweet, whereas the next 10 years will be the decade of science. And we really do see that. We really do think that a lot more investment attention will be focused towards that. But I just don't want it to be like things that sort of tend to get a little bit over exuberant, and the money that we're starting to see move in, that it, that there's still a significant degree of rationality that sits behind it.
Yeah. Asaf, what do you have to say?
Thank you, Nancy. So I think obviously, especially in the COVID-19 period, everything is becoming distributed. So people are trying to do everything in home or close to home. And also like talking with hospitals or cancer centers. So basically, hospitals are trying to do everything in telehealth, send basically patient to monitor in Quest Diagnostic in basically their community blood test facility, basically not bringing patient to hospital if it's not really needed. So if you think about cancer is going to stay, regardless if we have COVID or not, we need ways to monitor patients in their own community. So bringing them to imaging centers, to CAT scan, PET-CT, basically this is becoming something that is a bottleneck, that patient don't want to come, the clinician don't want to do it. Be able to basically send a patient to a Quest diagnostic lab near their home and do a blood test, or even do it at home, which is the next phase of the technology. This is going to be a major advantage. And basically that can be, so you're taking the blood, sending to some lab, this is uploaded to the cloud, the clinician can see the result, the patient can see the result, they can do telehealth, and that's it, and change the therapy. So that's something that everyone are going through. Besides that, so globally, things are becoming distributed. So basically sending sample from Singapore, from Europe to the US to a centralized lab is a model that is going to become obsolete, I believe.
Yeah.
And many of our customers believe. So basically giving this country the ability to do it in their own country, in their own NGS core, basically giving hospitals wherever in the world being able to do it in-house, this is something that is going to go. And
So
this is one of the
talking about testing capacity, right? Talking about testing capacity?
Yeah, so basically nowadays with the new Illumina machine, capacity is not the limit. Like basically you can do hundreds or thousands of patients a day. And basically the chemistry, so nowadays the chemistry and the sequencing becoming like a commodity. Everyone can do it, and we see community cancer centers starting their own NGS core instead of sending it to a centralized lab for Guardant or Foundation or so on. They're starting their own NGS core. And basically this is a trend that is going to grow. So people are going, it's becoming so simple that everyone can do the chemistry, the preparation and the sequencing, and the bottleneck becoming the software. So providing everyone the software envelope that basically allow them to do high quality interpretation, high quality analysis, this is going to be the next stage in this industry.
Great. So we've had a couple of questions. So maybe Laura, you can address this. It says, what are the biggest barriers to growing your business in New York City? And a related question, as your companies grow, what can New York City do better to help keep you here in the community? Any thoughts?
So for us, a big challenge is scaling up. And scaling up means accessibility to, for us, it looks like pilot plants that can do biomanufacturing in a testing capacity that isn't our, final scale. And we've done a scrape of every type of pilot plant that we could find here in the US. Most of them are biopharma focused. And we're, in this very unique spot of biomanufacturing for food applications. So the specificity and all of the purification that we have to, prove out is less high stakes than that of pharma. So for us, I would say, having access to something in New York or in the New York area that can help us with this type of piloted biomanufacturing process is something that we're really, really looking for, and I think could be a great service for all different kinds of companies here. I'm actually a mentor for a fund called Big Idea Ventures. They're focused on protein alternatives, the protein alternative space for food applications. And we've seen a lot of companies come in there that are trying to make some kind of protein alternative for food, and they need to look outside of the city for help to scale. So I think that would definitely be something that is a barrier for us, and also something we'd love to see a little bit more growth in, from a robust perspective, to get us more tools locally to be able to sustain the growth that we're predicting for our company and our product.
Yeah. Shara, last thoughts?
Yeah, I think much the same as Laura. We need to grow our team, and we need to get to market quickly. So a lot of that is growth, and so I think that means talent and jobs. So I think there's a lot of people that we've been able to find But I'm also interested in sort of expanding the pie of people that want to work in biotech. And, I think GenSpace does great work for getting people to understand how to work with biology. But I think some programs like that for building the base of people that can start to fill jobs would be really excellent. I think job growth is a big one. And the other is space. So, the question is ultimately, what parts of our business will we keep in New York and which will we not? And if we have the choice, we would like to keep everything in New York, but we need to have lab space where we can do our lab scale work that we can grow into tens of thousands of square feet. And we need this sort of pilot scale manufacturing plant where we can do bigger scale up and where we can do actual product development work as well. And so I think if we start to see those spaces become more available, we want to keep our operations in New York. And I think, economic incentives around job growth and space are always helpful. But really, you've got to have those two things available first.
Yeah, that's kind of the next step, right? And just for the audience who may not be familiar with GenSpace, it's a community laboratory where anyone can basically go and learn basic lab techniques and take courses there. And so it's actually open to all of you. I've taken a couple of courses there myself, and it's a lot of fun. You do hands-on lab work. But there is also the need to start earlier in, secondary schools and let kids begin to play around with these kinds of technologies. And, there's some educational programs that are coming up the line that are going into high schools and actually beginning to train teachers about how to teach about this and train students so that they know about it. Community colleges are starting courses now in Montgomery County. In Virginia, for example, they have a whole biomanufacturing facility built, and they're actually training students as technicians to work in those new facilities. First one I've seen in the country, and it's very exciting to see that beginning. But I think we're gonna see a faster and faster shift toward that as we go on. So, Nisha, any last thoughts that you want to share?
No, I think this was great. I think all our companies here really were spot on in their assessment. I think, we are well on our way. We're not there yet. I think the next step is definitely what happens after companies graduate from spaces like Biolabs, like JLabs. I think that's going to be an important next step. We see a few things happening at the moment, but there still needs to be a little bit more to bridge that gap. But look, after being in the New York City life sciences ecosystem for a couple of decades, it's so different than it was even 5 years ago. So I think we are on the right track. It's been an incredible journey so far, and there's more to come. We're not there yet, and we're still working to get to that finish point.
Right, great. Well, listen, I encourage all of you to stay. We're going to be put into chat rooms now where everyone can talk to each other. This is always the fun part of the meeting because you never know who you're going to meet, and probably people that you normally wouldn't even speak to if you were in person at a meeting. So this is one of the great benefits of Zoom, at least one of them anyway. So enjoy your discussions, and thanks everyone for being here, and thanks to you all for your presentation.